Matthew here from MiniWargaming.com, and this is another Sit and Talk. I apologize for not having done one of these for, I guess now it's 3 weeks. I missed 2 weeks, and I have a good reason. It's just that I've been incredibly busy, and those Fridays, because I do these Sit and Talks, I actually record them Friday morning. Right now it's February 21st, and I had battle reports all those days, and it's just, the weeks have been packed. Especially this week. It was a short week because we had holiday on Monday, so blah blah blah, excuses. There are 21 pages of comments. There's no way I'm going to be able to get through all those today, so I apologize. I just printed off the first half of them and see if I can get through those. So of course, if I do not answer your question, feel free to post it on the next Sit and Talk. Now, I'll have a bit of catch up to do, so it's possible that this is going to kind of spill over for the next few Sit and Talks. So if you want your question answered, then the sooner you post your comments, the better. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, don't post it on YouTube because I don't answer the comments on YouTube. Not because I don't like YouTube comments, but because it's easier for me to print off the ones from our website. So there will be a link in the video description so you can go and check that out. Also, just the typical disclaimer that I do, this show is about anything that people ask me about. It's the majority of the time we talk about wargaming or business, but it's possible that there will be questions that are related to religion or politics, things that people get easily offended over. So if the mere mention of religion makes you upset, because I understand some people will come here thinking, oh, this is just wargaming, and the rest of our channel, that's what it is, but this show is more just about asking me whatever questions you want, and getting to know me, and talking about business and whatever. So if you are easily offended by that, then please do not watch this show, because I do not want to offend you. I want you to just go and watch all our other battle reports and mini tutorials and all the other fun stuff that we do put out. And of course, if you do have religious questions, feel free to post them. But if you feel that they're more in-depth than what should really be covered in this show, then feel free to email me as well, Matthew@MiniWargaming.com. I get several, sometimes several a week, sometimes less, and I'm happy to reply to them. I don't always reply to them very quickly because they require a bit more time and thought to reply to. So if you do email me, give me a few days before you wonder if I'm going to reply at all. But I will reply. So let's go through this. Necron Overlord 4872. Matt, love the Mini Wargaming site. Wish I lived in Canada. Not just for your place, but it's so close to Wales, climate/looks-wise. Wish I could one day come play you guys, but I can't see that happening. Anyway, in relation to pricing, GWA make a lot of money on their models. If you're an independent model store here in the UK, you can bulk buy for a greatly reduced price. In fact, I order all my models from a site called Dark Sphere, who are 25 to 30% cheaper than GW. Also, thanks for getting me back into models, Necrons, painting, though my fiance is a bit upset with all the models. Also, hopefully playing if I can find people to play with. Wales is very bad for GW stores. Peace out. Well, you're welcome. And maybe one day you'll come to Canada. Just have to find an excuse to make a vacation to Niagara Falls. If you take a vacation to Niagara Falls, we're 20 minutes away. I said this in a video before, and Chris actually gave this idea. We should have like a tourist page, like seriously, on Mini Wargaming, where it's like, this is the page you show your wife/girlfriend, or boyfriend or husband, because there are the 7% of the female viewers here, and you show that to them to convince them to actually take a vacation here, because there's actually stuff to do here. It's not somewhere that, you know, it's not as exciting as maybe like the Mediterranean or places like that, but Niagara Falls, it's a big attraction, and there's nice spas around and nice things to look at, and Toronto's not that far, and lots of stuff. So you convince them to come down, you send them off with some money to go shopping, you come in and do a battle report with us. That's the way you gotta do it. Geeko170. As a person looking to get into other miniature games, based on its price, popularity, and level of enjoyment while playing. There's a question mark at the end of that. I'm not sure. Are you asking? Okay, I'm going to make the assumption that you're asking which game I would recommend. I'm going to assume that you play 40K, because you're talking about getting into other miniature war games. There's a lot. Basically, almost any other game is going to be a lot cheaper, because most other games are not to the scale of Warhammer 40K. It's not because model per model they're cheaper, although some people would argue that they are, but they're not. It's just, like when you go into Infinity, it's cheaper because you only have an army of about 20 to 30 miniatures once you've really bulked it up. And most of those are just small infantry-sized guys. So of course that's going to be cheaper than a Carnifex or a Terminator or a Centurion, like these big bulky multi-plastic kits. Like those are going to be more expensive. That's why I always say that, you know, Games Workshop prices aren't necessarily too high, but it is expensive because you need a lot of them, and they're complicated plastic kits. Whereas the other games, I'd say like probably the cheapest to get into would be Infinity if you like science fiction. The game's good, it's a lot of fun, and the armies are fun, the miniatures are good as well, and so they're good to paint and all of that. If you're looking for something really tactical, War Machine and Hordes, of course, is the big one out there right now. It's been growing for over the past decade now, and it's very popular now, at least in North America. I'm not sure how popular it is over in the UK and Europe. Not sure where you are, actually. But War Machine and Hordes, I love that game for its tactics. The armies, the miniatures are great too, the armies are great. It's a little bit more expensive than Infinity, but once again, that's just because you need more models, and a lot of those models are bigger. And so, of course, that means they're going to cost more. So, if I were to, I would say both of those are good candidates to look at to play another game. But it also really depends on what your gaming group is willing to get into, because the last thing you want to do is get into a game and not be able to get anybody else into it. So, Bad Doc. Hey Matt, don't know if this question has been posted, so apologies if it has. In your opinion, what makes your average war game a great game? I've been playing 40K for about 1.5 years now and want to make my games a bit more entertaining. Love your videos, thanks. To me, the things that make a game a really good game, there's a few different ways that a game can be a lot of fun. Like 40K is a lot of fun because you just kind of throw a lot of things out there and then you just kind of battle it out. And it feels more epic, there's a lot of things happening, and it's more forgiving, I find, that whereas like in games like Infinity and War Machine, like it comes down to sometimes millimeters if you move the wrong way. They're much less forgiving, but they're still fun. War Machine I find is fun because I know that if I get good at it, I will be good at it. Whereas with 40K, I can get really good at my army, but then if a new codex for another army comes out that is super overpowered, it doesn't matter how good I got, they'll just make that one list that just destroys mine. And that takes away some of the enjoyment. But I'll tell you one thing, I've been working with Steve comes in with his Necrons, and we've been doing a Tyranid Necron campaign. Now this is where I think 40K shines over pretty much any of the other games out there, and that we're doing this super fun. I haven't had so much fun playing any war game as I have been at playing this 40K campaign. It's been a total narrative campaign, so not competitive whatsoever. I've been kind of GMing or games mastering it by making all the missions and just kind of making stuff up as we go along to go with the story of what's happening. We actually react. What happens in one mission will affect how I design the next missions, and so it actually is evolving this really cool story. Like yesterday, one of the battles that we did was actually the Necrons raiding a hive ship, and it was just, oh, it was so much fun. And so to me, that is how 40K is to be played. I hate playing 40K competitively. Just don't think it's really that much fun. Sometimes it's okay. Like somebody comes in, I'm like, oh, that's a hard army, so I'm going to build my army as best as I can. But I find that that's where I had the least amount of fun. And I would never go to a 40K tournament. Maybe one day, but I just have no desire to try to play it on a real competitive basis. And that's why with the Beat Map Bat Reps, you don't see me, like I do play competitively, I do try to win, but it's more about what kind of cool army can I bring and try out. Unless I know my opponent's going to bring a really hard army like the Eldar Dark Arrow, then I'll actually really try to list tailor to that because I know I'm going to have a hard time against it. But for the most part, I'm just going to have fun building the army. So to me, that's what makes 40K fun. War Machine I find is fun because you can play it tactically. You can go at it and say, I'm going to go into this with tactics. And while there are some combos out there that are known for being really powerful, for the most part, I'm not going to say the game is really balanced, but it is way more balanced than 40K. Infinity is fun. It doesn't really have the balance of War Machine like it does, but since it's a smaller scale game, a few bad rolls and you're done, or a few good rolls and you've destroyed your opponent. So it's not that it's imbalanced, it's more just that it usually is a slaughter from one side to the other. But for me, Infinity is a lot of fun because it encourages you to play with a lot of terrain, and we've got all this really cool MDF terrain from all sorts of different companies that Adam from Greenleaf Terrain has assembled and painted for us. And so if you've watched our Infinity Battle reports, you see that we have these gorgeous looking tables, and to me, that makes that game a lot of fun. So if we're seeing a few different things here, like if a game has solid mechanics like War Machine, where it's actually well written and very tactical, I like that. If it has like the ability for really cool campaigns, like I know you could do campaigns in War Machine and Infinity, but there's something about 40K campaigns where you can just kind of start small, you can escalate them up, you can go from your tiny 500 point games, you can do all sorts of really neat missions and then scale it up to 10,000 points and have this huge apocalypse game in the end. You can't really do that with War Machine and Infinity. So that's what's fun about 40K, and then Infinity, of course, or I guess the terrain of Infinity and how accessible it is because it's all the MDF stuff. It makes it really fun too. So there's three key components. How much you can kind of take it and make your own campaigns and stories and narrative stuff, the cool terrain that is accessible with the game, and of course, well-written rules. So if you could have a game that had all three of those, that would be awesome. So far, there isn't one of those that exist. At least, in my opinion. I have to say, I have to tack that on there because it's all subjective. A Humped Goblin. That's a great username. The thing is, in Australia, modern GW miniatures are actually produced here. Many boxes have "produced in Australia" stickers plastered onto them. None of that money we pay covers cross-continental shipping and import tax. It may have used to, but the cost of GW products has gone up since miniatures were produced here, not down. Yeah, I can't claim to know exactly the reason why they price them the way they do. And so it's really hard to say. Mad Hawaiian. Hey Matt, I found your site a week or so ago. Wow, very new. Welcome. And I love the battle reports your company does. It was what got me interested in Warhammer 40K. I've recently purchased the Dark Vengeance starter set and played a few games. After looking over the various armies, I've decided to play with orcs. Do you think I should purchase the old codex and start building my orc army now, or wait for the release of the new codex? That's tough. It is rumored to come out this year, I think. It was rumored to come out actually first quarter, but I don't think that's going to be the case. If you have the extra money, like I wouldn't start an army without a codex. Unless you're an avid collector / painter. Like if you can get into it without playing the game, then yeah, just start buying some models. Now the only problem is when they release a new codex, some of those models might get updated as well. So, my opinion, I would wait until they're updated. Because they're such an old codex and they're pending a new update, I would wait. That would be my opinion. But if you're looking at the stuff and you're just really wanting to get into it, then grab them. Buying the codex, that's a bit of an investment knowing that it might be replaced, but if you're going to play the army, you kind of need the codex. So, I don't know how much money you have. If you've got 50 or 60 bucks to burn, then yeah, grab the codex, I would say. And then when the new stuff comes out, then you can grab that as well. So just don't buy anything that's like metal, because you know that most likely those will be going out. Just go for the basic stuff, the plastic kits like your Orc Boys and Knobs and Ludas and trucks, that kind of stuff. And then we'll see what gets updated. I wouldn't be surprised if the trucks and battle wagons got updated, but that's just my opinion there. Continuing, do you think there are any units that are future-proof? No. Anything could change, but Orc Boys I would say are most likely not to change, because they're already pretty cool, and they've already changed before. With the changes to the Tyranid Codex making some units much worse than they were, taking this away from your videos, I'm being hesitant to invest so much money right now. You just it depends. Like I said, I don't play 40K competitively, so at first I was like, oh, the new Codex ruined so much, it really sucks, but now I'm playing them, and I have to actually really retract that. I really am enjoying the new Tyranid Codex. Yes, certain things got nerfed, certain things got buffed, certain things don't make any sense, but it's fun. And that's all I can really say. See, as soon as you can kind of get the whole, I want to play this game competitively out of your mind, hopefully your friends can get out of that mindset as well and bring just fun lists. If you want to play competitively, sure. You're like, okay, let's really try to beat each other. Okay, we've done that now. Let's have some fun and just some fluffy stuff. That's where you have fun. Also, thank you for the great tutorial videos. They help my friends and I understand the rules in a clear and easy fashion. Are there any plans to create more tutorial videos? Actually, I have just got an idea not too long ago that I'm probably going to move forward with, but just don't expect it in the next couple of weeks. But I was thinking of doing a how to play, 40K, Infinity, War Machine in a battle report style tutorial. And that's basically where, rather than your typical tutorials, which are like, okay, I'm going to show you how to do this, just a one person talking and then moving stuff around, we'll actually play small games that focus on certain elements of the game. For example, we might play a game of 40K just with basic guys at first, so you can learn the movement shooting and assault phase. Would be a very basic one. So this is how you move. And so we'll keep the units simple, so there's not too many special rules coming in. And then we might play a game that involves transports, and so both sides will make sure that they bring transports, even if the game doesn't make sense for balance-wise. It doesn't matter. It's just so that you can see how disembarking and embarking works. We'll have a game that focuses on vehicles. But we still, I go over rules when I do my battle reports, but I don't go over the basic stuff. Like I'm moving a guy, I don't say, this guy gets to move 6 inches. Oh, now I'm going to do a difficult terrain roll where I roll 2 dice and I take the best one. I don't do that, but I will say they're hitting on 4s and they're going to wound on 3s. And it's our AP2, so I'm ignoring his armor. He'll take his 3+ invulnerable instead. I'll say things like that, so it's more like an intermediate level. Whereas with these how to play battle report style kind of things, it'll be very basic. It'll be like, these guys, everybody gets to move 6 inches. And once it gets further in the series, this would be a series, like how to play 40k, it would be a series. And the later ones wouldn't repeat every little rule. They'd be more focusing on the rules that battle report itself brings into it. And then actually have a full series that pretty much covers the majority of the rules, except for maybe some of the special rules and some codexes, but more stuff from the main rule book. So I do have plans to do that. And they should be easy to produce, because they'll just be small games, we can do a lot of them all at once. But we'll see. We'll see. That's my plan. So hopefully we'll get around to that, because we're very busy with other stuff as well. Mindfuss 1. Hi Matt, when commanding your Nid army, what is your least favorite army or armies to play against, and why? Eldar and Dark Eldar. Tau, I know some people have a hard time with, but the games I've played with Tau, I've managed to beat them and lose to them, but more winning than losing, so it's not as big a deal. And it might have just been that they weren't bringing those super dumb lists, which I appreciate because that's no fun. But Eldar, they just seem to be able to counter everything that the Tyranids have, and Dark Eldar as well. So I'd say Eldar and Dark Eldar, big time. Especially Eldar/Dark Eldar with the allies and everything, because then you can do some really nasty combos. I love the BatRef style you guys use, but I noticed that you really don't measure movement distance. You really just eyeball it. Doesn't that ever lead to disagreements or arguments? Well, 2 things. I do actually measure. Because I'm holding the camera with one hand, I measure it, and then I start the camera and I move it. So I kind of, when I put the measuring thing down, I notice a little where it's going to be going to, and then I move it there. Is that going to be perfect? No. But my opponents, when they come in, are very good at this. Like, we measure to the ½ inch where it matters. Like when we're doing a charge, like for example, I'm about to do a charge, so I measure, and I'm like, I'm going to need a 7-inch charge. So then I roll it and I get my 7-inch charge, and so they just move in. And if I see that it's going to matter, like there's guys far enough back that maybe some of them won't get into the combat, then we'll measure that and get it in. But for the most part, it's not actually too important if you're off by 1/4 inch. It's not like War Machine or maybe Infinity, where those millimeters actually matter for line of sight and all those kind of things. So no, it hasn't actually caused problems. In fact, it speeds up the game and increases the enjoyment, because my opponent can do the same thing. I basically just measure the first guy, move him up, and then just move everybody up in formation. So, not that I have a problem with it, I actually prefer to play that way, but I don't know anyone that would let me move a squad without physically moving the models under the tape measure. Yeah, I think I explained that. Lastly, I'd like to add how much I enjoy the Sit and Talks. Well, thank you. You talk about anything with your fans, and you're incredibly respectful. You read my comments, and it makes me feel special. Whee! I have the utmost respect for a company that holds fan interaction as a high priority, and dedicates a video series just to getting to know us. GW could learn a thing or two from Mini Wargaming. Thank you. You're welcome, and thank you. I do have to say, though, in larger companies' defense, not just GW, but any other one, that's a little easier for us to do this, because we're a smaller scale company. Once you get to a larger scale, like, for example, today there's 21 pages of comments, which means I'm only going to get through maybe half of them. So imagine if we were 10 times the size, and all of a sudden I was going to answer the questions. I'd have to do this in a different format, in some way of prioritizing the comments. Maybe like people get to vote on which comments will actually get answered. And so all of a sudden it kind of starts to remove, there's not as much of a good chance that your comment would be answered, and so you might feel that it's not as personable. So it is harder for larger companies to do it. But I do agree that they could be a lot better with their interaction with their fans. In other words, actually interacting with their fans. Outside of their stores. Obviously their stores do. Mr. Wizard, hi Matt, I agree with majority rules in general, but going back to your religious freedoms quote, you believe in religious freedoms up to a point. I also believe this. I think that we as a society should use majority rules in the same manner, because at a certain point things turn from democracy to tyranny of the majority, where the majority feels that it is all right to oppress certain groups. For example, the Ottoman Empire treatment of Jews at the beginning of World War I. Would love to hear your thoughts on this perspective. That's a tough one because basically the way I look at it is that for the majority of the time, the majority ruling will choose what's generally good, what's generally right. And there's not really a better system than that. And I know some people out there are going to be like, oh yes there is, but there's not really, because if you give power to less individuals, to the minorities or to just a few individuals, then that's tricky. Because for example, like with a king, if you have a good king and he's got total rule, he's got total control, then that'll be fine. Everybody will be happy and think, hey, it's great to have a king. But then you have a bad king and that's all thrown away just because of one person. And so to me, it's kind of like, there's that one quote, who was it, who said democracy is the best system, or democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. I can't remember who said that. And that's kind of the way I look at it. It's like, it's the best that we can do with our imperfect society. And so I think the majority of the time, the majority will choose generally what's right. Whereas for more often, minorities will choose something that wouldn't be right. So I know that's well, what I just said there is very controversial. I understand that, but that's where I'm coming from. That's my beliefs of that. What are you laughing at, Chris?
Nothing.
All right. He's not allowed to disagree with me. Every time you disagree.
You're really good at backpedaling like Muhammad Ali was at boxing.
I'm good at backpedaling like Muhammad Ali is at boxing. I actually don't know how good he is at boxing. Is he bad at boxing?
Master, man.
He's okay. I know that's so, but you made it sound like maybe I'm not good at backpedaling. I'm not backpedaling. I'm just more like saying, I know what I just said. Some people will be like, what? I don't agree with that, and that's fine. We're talking about politics here. Like what? Oh, actually, no. We were talking about religion and politics. Like, holy cow! That's a hard thing to talk about with an individual. Never mind with a large group. So that's why I understand. Comrade War Games. Hey Matt, I've recently joined the Vault. Best decision ever. I did not add that. It actually says that. See? Best. Hold on, can you read that? Best decision ever. Just so you know, I'm not like somebody who says, hey, I just joined the Vault and I love it so much and everybody else should join it. And I don't actually add that. I actually just read what they say. Anyways, I recently joined the Vault. Best decision ever. Thank you, and thank you very much for your support. And it is pretty awesome. Anyways, I have been watching your vids since you only had 3 to 4 out. Wow. And have seen a lot of changes. It is really cool to see how Mini Wargaming developed. Now for a question. What do you think of the new Tyranid Gargoyles? Will there be a possible combo? I've only tried them in one game and it was a narrative one, so it's not really a fair assessment. They lost their ability to auto wound when they roll a 6 to hit, and that sucks, but that's okay. They're super cheap. I think combo wise, I'm not sure yet, but I think they're great. They're cheap. They're flying, so they're fast, and they're just turn-ons with wings with blinding venom in close combat. So that's pretty awesome. So obviously there's probably some combos with them running the close combat, blinding the opponent, and then having other people go in and attack it while it's weapon skill 1. So there's probably something there. Just don't know it yet. Bloodsy. I'm at Hayden from Australia here. Hello Hayden. Love the site and have been a Vault member for around 2 years now. Wow, thank you. You're awesome. Keep that awesome content coming. I really enjoy everyone from Mini Wargaming's content each week. I noticed in your last few new NID bat reps, you have been doing it banter style. Thank you. It's much more enjoyable for me to hear everything going on in the bat rep as it happens, not a voiceover later on. I am a religious person myself, Jehovah's Witness. That's great. And I'm glad I've actually known and respected a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm glad you are able to speak about your beliefs so calmly and factually when being attacked on this with comments from time to time. All I have to say most of the time, the comments have been great. So thank you everybody for being very civil. This happens a lot myself when I refuse to take librarians, psychics in my Space Marine army or have anything to do with chaos or demons based on my religious beliefs, and I can see that. Have you ever had such occurrences from gaming opponents or others? Not really. Now, when it comes to that kind of stuff, I don't have as much a problem with it. I'm a little uneasy with the whole, like, the demon stuff. I tend to not focus on that as much. But I don't have a problem with things like librarians and psychics and wizards and witches and all that, because not going against your beliefs, but in my thoughts, just because it's fiction, it's not as big a deal to me. Once again, working really hard here to respect other people's beliefs, because totally, if that's your views, then in fact, if I was playing Space Marines and I knew that was your views, I would actually avoid bringing the stuff that I knew you wouldn't like to play with. That's how much I'd want to respect it. So, but no, I can't say any such occurrences have happened with me. Although, you know what, one thing has happened is like the thing about everybody keeps asking, or a lot of people keep asking, will you be covering, what's that horror game? Malifaux. People, from time to time, people keep asking that. And I'm like, no, it's a little too, it's a little too much sexuality, a little too much this. So I have encountered like people saying like, what, really? Okay, well, all right, whatever. So I have seen that, yes, but not necessarily in the games that we've played. Saint. Hello, Matt. First off, I'd like to thank you, Mini Wargame, for getting me into the hobby. Now that I've been playing one game for a while now, 40K, and getting to know several more regular players at my local game store, I've been thinking of branching into another game. However, I've run into something of a dilemma. I don't really like any of the other games that the store sells and organizes tournaments for. Fantasy is too expensive to start another army. I can't really dig the lore of Privateer Press games, and Malifaux just seems a little too different, and not terribly popular from what I can gather, at least where I live. I've been interested in Infinity since I saw it on some Blue Table Painting Bat Reps in your series, has really got my interest peaked to try it. So my question is this: how would I go about seeing if players in my area are interested in trying the game? If I do get some interest, how would you recommend that we go about getting everything started once we have a few willing to start? This is probably one of the trickiest and hardest things about wargaming, is that since it's a niche hobby, the hardest part about it is getting players that you can play with. I can say this from experience because before we started Mini Wargaming, when I got into Lord of the Rings, I came back and I'm like, nobody plays it around here. Heck, I didn't even know of anybody who played 40K. And so I tried to get my friends into it. I got Dave into it, and then there was a few other people like my brother and some other people, but really out of all my friends, only Dave has been the one, or and Dan, I guess I kind of got, did I get Dan into it or was he already into it? I can't remember. But anyways, out of everybody, Dave was like the only one, and we started the business together. And so it was really hard. There was even times I even bought miniatures from some people, and I'm like, here, this is fun. And you know, that actually isn't the way to do it, because then there's less investment for them. And the more investment they can have, the more stuff. Why do I have this big box right here in my... Sorry, getting distracted. So it's really hard, but what it comes down to is we need people in this hobby who will be the go-getters and the ones that'll try to pull other people in. Like Privateer Press really understands this. That's why they have their press ganger program. And when you meet press gangers, you can see what I'm talking about. They're enthusiastic. They're excited to get people in. They're excited to teach people. And if you're able to do that, if you're willing to teach lots of people, and half of them or more will actually fall out of the hobby, but you can still keep your enthusiasm, then you just have to work at it. But if you can work with the store as well, if the store manager and employees are willing to work with you in running events and stuff, that can really help too. It'll gather interest. But it'll take several months before you can get a good group going in it. But it really does come down to if the store will help support you in that. You can do it on your own, but it will really help if they do, because then they can provide you with a gaming space for events and things. And it's in their best interest, of course, because then it grows the gaming community and sells more of their products. Now, getting started, really, that's not the hard part. If people want to get into it, they choose which armies look coolest to them and get their interest, and they just start building. Start off, you can do like what Privateer Press calls a journeyman league, where they actually have a league, like an actual series of events that you do, and it's built to build up your armies, and you get points for playing games, you get points for painting miniatures, and then you get some prizes at the end. So there's things like that to incentivize, and those seem to work really well. So you can basically, I would take a look at Privateer Press and the way that they build the hobby, because I think out of all the companies, they're doing the most with that, and I think most successfully. So take a look there and just kind of get some ideas from them. Manker, honestly, I'm debating reworking the rules for 40K if I were to ever get back into it. The system as a game is meh. I like the lore. The company seriously bothers me, but the models are amazing. You know, I think that I can completely agree with everything you just said there. I feel like with a little tweaking by a person in the community to create a better system that's more balanced and logical, like not having a Hive Guard being with its skill 3, I know, right? It could breathe life into the game that has been dead for me for a while. I'll tell you what, to me what's made it exciting is not necessarily trying to rework the rules, but like I said, abandoning the competitive style and playing some narrative stuff. And that, to me, is what other games could do better, is supporting that narrative style thing. And if they do that, then it makes the game super interesting. Give the players as many different ways to play the game as possible. Clavis, hey Matt, I'm reposting my comment from last Talk. It's okay. I was wondering about your thought on Forge World, especially on their last brand, Horus Heresy, aka Warhammer 30K. Haven't really looked at it. Forge World overall, I think it's fine. There must be a reason why they have it separate for those models. It must just be the cost-effective. It's actually good business practice to chunk off a smaller company to take care of things that aren't worth it on a larger scale. It's actually wouldn't be a bad idea for them to do that for their specialist games as well. Because the big thing is the Games Workshop as a whole, as a big company, it doesn't make sense for them to invest money into these smaller games, smaller production things, because that money could be invested in something bigger. But what does make sense for larger companies to do is to kind of make these little subsidiary companies where they can kind of run on their own, so they can run like a small business, which means their overhead just drops, and they kind of work on it that way. And I think that would actually really work for their specialist games. Just create a subsidiary that's even like called the Games Workshop Specialist or something, where it actually works, not completely independently, because obviously it's under the same umbrella, but it works separately overall. Like it has its own pool of employees and warehouses and everything, so it can kind of keep its expenses down. So I think the idea of Forge World is fine. I haven't really looked at the Horus Heresy and Warhammer 30K, but to me, like I said just now, the more ways you can make a game be played, the better. So that's my only thoughts on it right now. When I take a look at it, I feel like they're getting the face of Warhammer 40K, which is the big PR hole in Games Workshop. Even more, the put the Warhammer gaming to a new level with a lot of new stuff with rules and experimentation. I found that this is what Warhammer should aim for. A high-end game where you are always offering to buy more because new stuff looks great, not because a change in the meta force you to buy more. I think that the Horus Heresy product is a great incarnation of those characteristics. The regular video that are coming out from the artists about their products gives you the attachment to what you will buy, and the rules and settings just bring up to a new level to the game, encouraging you to play fluff-wise with the bonus and malice of each legion, etc. Some may say that it's really expensive, but I feel that I pay well for what I get compared to how I feel when it comes about Games Workshop. Exactly. That is exactly it. And that is what they're lacking in their other games. And yeah, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. Miso, have you played the new Blizzard game Hearthstone? You would love it. Very cool, especially the arena mode. Could you do some videos for it? I haven't played it. Maybe I'll try it, but no interest yet. Regarding GW pricing, what is genius about Warmachine is that it's cheap to get into the game, it's tactically interesting at the lowest level, and by just changing one model you effectively have a completely different army. Compare that to Fantasy, huge regiments of grunts that cost a bomb. Whoa, I just kicked the stand. Alright, we're back. Yes, that is an advantage for Warmachine, but we can't diss the larger scale games, because larger scale games are just cool. And that's what Warmachine lacks. You just can't have the literally hundreds of models on the table and looking so cool and epic as they approach each other. So you have to kind of you have to give each game the credit where the credit is due, and also see, like I'm not a big Fantasy fan. I'll just say that. I'm not a big fan of movement trays and all that, but I can still see how the game is good. But I can also see how the game needs a ton of improvement too. Battle Cap Ironblood. Hi Matt, regarding your talk about GW pricing and casuals getting into the hobby, I had the same problem when I started playing 40K a year and a half ago. I had to buy my stuff piecemeal, saving money for months to get single units of a few models and such. It's not all bad though. The strategy has allowed me to take my time with the painting involved and allowed my models to look like a good tabletop standard quality and sometimes higher. I'm also wondering what you think of those Asian model makers that make GW models without their permission and sell them for much cheaper on certain sites. What I think about those is that it's criminal and unethical and should not be done. Simple as that. Now I know there's, law-wise, I think they can get away with it just because the laws for copyrights and trademarks are different country to country, but I still think it's clearly unethical, even if it's not illegal. I've never tried one of those, and I'm certain there are high risks involved in getting these, but I'm just curious to know what you think. There you go. Bahal. Was not being ironic when complimenting your intelligence. Well, thank you. It's sometimes hard to tell with comments. Your reasonable and even-sided responses attest to, I'll admit. The wording was aggressive at times, and I apologize if I offended you. It's okay. I meant archaic, and not necessarily in a negative way, but the fact ideas found in religious texts are typically old or old-fashioned, and mostly conservative, and mostly resistant to change. A joke. I'm not going to read it. A joke about Catholics. All right. Oh, actually, no, you're a Catholic. That's what you just said. Okay, so I guess I can read it. How many Catholics does it take to change a light bulb? Wait for it. Change? It's okay if I poke fun at my own religion, right? Actually, you could probably stick Mormons or Protestants or anything else, because most, like you said, most religions are conservative in that they are slow to change. Regardless, you're correct that dialogue and compromise are pillars of democracy. When they die, so too does the government. Yeah, and I do believe certain things do need to change, but the kind of like the basic fundamental doctrines of what is taught in the gospel and in the scriptures, to me, that is not changing. The structure of the church doesn't necessarily need to change a lot. I mean, like overall structure. Obviously, internally, you're going to have things change with the ages, but you're definitely going to have changes. Even the Bible shows that there's lots of changes throughout. If you talk about things like the law of Moses coming in later and then going away, so there's changes. There's things that change according to the times. But things like the definition of family or charity and trying to love and respect and not stealing and not killing, committing no adultery, that kind of stuff, like the basic moral issues, those shouldn't change, and that's the stuff we fight to try to keep the same. Hi Fleet America. Hey Matt, new fan of Mini Wargaming. I found you guys about a month ago, and just you guys and your videos grew on me. Well, thank you. I enjoy coming back daily to watch your guys' videos. And I must ask, as a new Tyranid player, I think they're awesome, but I'm trying to do a melee army. That's hard, I'll tell you right now. And in 6th edition, that's really hard. See, you agree with me. Any tips? Well, Venomthropes are a key thing to have, because if you're going to do melee, you need to get across the table. So it's almost worth it to take up 2 of your elite slots with 2 groups of 3 Venomthropes. If you play at the 2,000 point level, then do double Force Orc so you can bring those 2 Venomthropes and still bring your other support like Zoanthropes and Hive Guard. That's definitely it. The good close combat guys, it's obviously going to be your Hormagaunts, upgraded however makes sense. Adrenal Glands and Toxin Sacs, either of those can work depending on the army you're going up against. If you're going up against a bunch of toughness 3 guys like Eldar and Dark Eldar, Tau, those kind of things, then but there's going to be a lot of vehicles. Adrenal Glands are good because most vehicles they can glance. Their rear armor's 10. But if you're going up against higher toughness things, especially things like monstrous creatures, then you're definitely going to want to give them Toxin Sacs so they can just swarm the big guys and just shoot them to pieces. But close combat, you're going to want warriors with bone swords and stuff like that. And but the key is to protect them as they go across. So you should always have some fire support, I believe, like Biovores or Hive Guard, or even some Carnifexes. But yeah, I think it's doable. But certain armies will just be suicide. Like if you're up against a shooting army like Tau or Eldar, don't even try it. Like it's just you're just gonna get frustrated unless they're willing to do something fun so that you can actually get across. But against the less shooty armies, like your typical like Space Marines or Necrons or stuff, it's a little more doable because they're shorter range shooting, they're not as fast, and so you're able to kind of get in there. Bahal, as an educator, I can say with some degree of certainty and with no irony whatsoever that you are indeed smart. LOL. Thank you. I'm not just picking up the comments that make me look good. I'm just reading them from the beginning and end. Oh wait, did I already read this? Oh, I see. Yeah, you wrote that, and then you wrote this. Okay. Actually, so Bahal, anyway, as an avid Orc player, I was wondering if you think their codex will receive similar treatment to that of the Tyranids. Oh, it's so hard to tell what the codex... Anytime Games Workshop updates a codex, it's like a roll of a die. It's going to be like, what's going to happen? Like, I would not have guessed half the things that they did with the Tyranids. And it was like kind of weird. I was like, really? Okay, all right. So let's make instinctive behavior really complicated and like make it worse, make it harder on the Tyranids. Yes, I agree with that. It was too easy to ignore it before because the feed became a good thing to actually be at a Synapse, whereas it was never meant to be. It's just because of the edition change. But make it like all these tables that you have to like keep looking back up and rolling on. Like that's too. It was just weird. But will the Orcs receive a similar treatment? Well, I hope they get a huge overhaul because right now they're very plain and kind of like nah. They're cool fluff-wise, but when it comes to actually playing them, there's not much variety there. So hopefully they can add in that variety that they really need, like ways to play differently, not just like here's a big blob or here's a bunch of trucks that no longer are viable anymore because they used to be really cool, but now everything can destroy them really easily. Derby Boy 21. I know you don't play much of fantasy, but what do you think of the new dwarves and how they were released without a codex so far? I think it's weird that they weren't released with the codex right away. But because you kind of need the codex to give you a reason to buy the stuff. So that's what I think. Mr. Wizard, Matt, why do you think that although having good terrain, a good gaming table really helps immerse you in the gameplay, that in my experience people tend to spend much more money and time on their models? In your experience, have you found that this is tend to be true? And if so, why do you think it is? I think it is because the models are already made. The terrain you have to make yourself from scratch. But from the very beginning, I've been more infatuated with terrain than the models. Because to me, you can have a good painted army, and you put it on a table that's books and cans and bottles or whatever, and it just loses it. Whereas you can have a moderately well-painted army. Most of mine are, except the new stuff that I've been getting from other painters, which is fantastic. And you put it on really good-looking terrain, and all of a sudden it's just like, I love this game, it's so much fun! And it really makes a difference. So why do I think that is? I think it's because the models are already made, so it's easier. Not that it's easier to paint models than it is to make terrain. That's not what I'm saying. But it's kind of like, I've got this model already made, I paint it, I'm done. Whereas with terrain, you've got to find materials. It can be harder a little bit in some ways to make that, and it takes a bit more time. And models you can kind of pack away in a small area, whereas terrain takes up a lot of space. The Sorcerer. Hi Matt, I used to play Tyrannus in 2009, but my models were damaged and I haven't played with them since. So that sucks. Because I had other armies, but now that the new codex is out, I'm tempted to start playing them again. Could you design a competitive 500 point list off the top of your head? Well, you already know what I think about competitive, and 500 point lists are never balanced, because you can throw on that one thing which is meant to be at a higher points level. So no, not really. But if we're looking at the army overall, see, that's too much. There's actually a lot of good stuff. But at 500 points, I guess competitive would be a Tyranid Prime, Warriors, and Hormagaunts. But if your opponent is a 500 point army and he brings vehicles, then you're done, right? Like that's the problem with 500 points, is that you really need to know what your opponent has in order to make it fair. But you can't just have an all-comers list, period. But it's really hard to have them at 500 points. Rover1013, reposting from last week. Hey Matt, since this is the second time the Malifaux sexuality thing has come up, a third now. I'm curious about what the game gives you that impression. What about the game gives you that impression? Is it some of the sculpts, the fluff, something else? Just when I looked at the website and was looking through the books, just there was some imagery, there was some art, definitely some of the sculpts. Just overall, it was just an overall impression as I skimmed through all the different things, and so that turned me off of it. Malifaux is my primary and favorite tabletop minis game because I love the game system as well as enjoying the fluff. I just don't understand what their impression came from based on the fluff, where I expect the kind of issue to originate. I don't think it was the fluff. I didn't really read much. It was just more, I was just looking through imagery. My views on sexuality and religion are quite different from yours, so maybe it's just a difference of perspective that I don't get. It might just be that. It might just be that I don't use the word sensitive. I'm maybe more, just different views on it. What one person would deem as acceptable, somebody else wouldn't. It's really just that. I love your coverage and what you guys do, even though I'm sad that Malifaux isn't covered and it seems it may never be. So keep the great content coming and I'll keep supporting it. Well, lucky for us, it's not like, oh, we're not going to cover Malifaux. That's like this big hit on what we could be doing as a company. There's so many games out there, and we're not even covering 40K and Fantasy and War Machine as much as we could, let alone Infinity and all these other ones. And so there's so much room for growth and what we could be covering that it's okay that there might be some games. Because Malifaux is not the only one, I'll tell you. There are other games that we've looked at covering that I was like, no, definitely not. G.S. Brooks, Matt, love the sit and talks. Thank you. I know there's a lot of talks about the cost of Games Workshop games, but really when you look at the grand scheme of things, they are not really that bad. If you buy an army, it is good for years and years, just the codexes and the main book updates with very few new additions to the armies. In games like Magic, etc., you have to constantly buy new stuff in order to keep playing. I know players that still play with older figures, and just update if something grabs their attention. Games Workshop is in it for the long haul and not trying to put out things very fast to gain casual gamers. You guys keep up the good work. Yeah, and that's where it's so hard to compare prices with hobbies, because like you buy how much is a computer game worth? Well, you buy them new, generally $50 to $70, right? But one game will give you 20 hours of gameplay, and another will give you hundreds, and yet they sell for the same price. You go see a movie, and they generally sell for the same prices. The ticket prices are the same, and yet one of them can be really enjoyable and one of them is really bad, and yet they sell for the same price. So it's hugely subjective what things are worth. And really what it comes down to, in basic economics, they are worth what people will be willing to pay for them, as much as they'll be willing to pay for them. And so that's why you try to get your prices as high as possible and that the market will still sustain, because that's what they're worth. And so incredibly subjective, you have to just kind of go based on that. So yeah, Games Workshop products. Like, let's say you spend $3,000 on miniatures, but then you have them for the next 5-10 years, and you're playing with them. And if you use them a lot, you have hours and hours of enjoyment, and maybe that adds up to something that's okay. Who knows? It's really hard to tell. Charlemagne, hey Matt, I've been watching mini wargaming videos for about a month now, and I love you guys so much I bought a year of gold. You're awesome. Here is your awesome sticker. No irony. You mentioned how THQ put a lot of eggs in one basket, a lot of money, because they have to. As a game enthusiast and developer, I would like to point out that it's not necessarily at all for companies to invest astronomical resources into games. Many games are successful with such quantities of money. Take Dark Souls, for example. They only sold over 2 million copies of that game, a small amount compared to many other titles. However, the game was a huge success because they invested smartly and more than their money's worth. I believe it is important to note that the outrageous sums of money spent on games is a flaw in the industry, not a prerequisite to making games. I agree and disagree. There's different levels of games, just like there's different levels of movies. When you look at movies, you got your huge blockbusters, like let's say The Avengers, for example, or any of those comic book movies, and they require a huge budget for their really cool actors and awesome CG, computer effects and everything. Whereas you have your independent films, and independent films can be just as fantastic and enjoyable, but they can't have that level of production quality. Your independent films will focus more on like drama and maybe comedy, things that can be done just with people and just day-to-day sets, like things that you don't have to spend a lot of money on. But so they're kind of restricted to what they do, but it's its own genre. And so games like, for example, Minecraft, I'm assuming that wasn't huge development costs. Their team is quite small compared to other video game companies, and yet it was hugely successful. But not every game can be a Minecraft. You also need your larger scale games. You need that. Minecraft is kind of in its own genre of smaller scale games. And you have all these indie games coming out, which are great. But THQ is not an indie game company. It's a company that produces larger blockbuster type computer games. Should they branch out to do indie games? That's a risky thing. A large business trying to change their overall model, that's tough to do successfully. So I agree and disagree. I agree, yes, there's games that don't require as much investment, and they can be enjoyable and quite successful. In fact, by requiring less investment, their requirement to being successful is way less than those larger games. But there's a place for each of those. And so these larger companies are kind of, it's a little more risky, but the smaller ones are risky too, because they might have a smaller investment, but they might not have the marketing power to even, like for every one like this, for every Dark Souls, there's probably 100 other smaller scale ones that have a smaller budget that make no money and go out of business. So you got to look at it that way too. Also, you mentioned there being more competition in the game industry. This is true, but only because there are so many companies. While Games Workshop does not compete on a pricing level and mostly ignores other miniatures games, you can at least say that they will contest the legal rights to their own line of products viciously. When the new upcoming games like War Machine and Infinity start taking their toll, no doubt you will see fierce competition from Games Workshop. Yeah, but there's competition. The level of competition depends on the size of the market. That's really what it is. The reason there's more companies in the gaming market is because there are more people buying games and more people interested in buying games. Whereas in this market, it'll always be smaller than those markets. So you'll always have less competition. That's just what it comes down to. The larger a market, the more competition, because more people can jump into it and make money. And so that creates that. I suggest that you watch this short video later to illustrate my point. Also, this text area is small. I actually open up developer tools and increase the size of the box. Get your website guy to change the height and width of this thing. Yeah, I don't think it was designed for the sit-and talks. Sunset68. Regarding Games Workshop pricing, I first got into wargaming in the mid-late 80s and played for around 10 years. Prices from then to now have increased something like 6 to 8 times as much, while inflation has only increased by 2 to 3 times. Although they haven't been going up with inflation. That's what I just was saying before. They've actually been jacking their prices up to see what their prices could be. This is what makes Games Workshop so expensive today. Back when I played... Okay, I think we've talked about pricing enough. Yeah, so I'm going to skip the rest of your comment because we have talked about pricing a lot. Kurt86, I'm just wondering what happened to Vault members being able to download your videos. Now this is specifying downloading the free videos, not you can still download the Vault videos if you're silver or gold. Is that something to do with the provider you guys use? Yeah, we used to use Blip for all our videos on Mini Wargaming, the free videos. And so one of the things we gave Vault members was the ability to download it because there was this nice API I could use with Blip that would give you the MP4 as a link. And so I said, hey, well, that'll be a nice little perk for Vault members. But now we're just using YouTube, but they don't have that. But just to clarify, you can silver and gold members can download Vault videos, whereas bronze members just watch them through streaming. So that's what happened. Nurgle82. Hey Matt, I think the new Tyrannus Codex is actually pretty well done. At first I was so disappointed, but after looking at it in more detail, I kind of agree with the changes that were made. Except Hiveguard illicit skill drop. Yeah, I agree. I feel it forces you to bring more variety now, which is good. The Doom of the Spore Pod, I think we all knew that wasn't going to last. Well, I thought they would keep it. I guess the Chapter House thing kind of forced their hand there. But it definitely needed a nerf. Maybe actually having them roll psychic powers for it rather than just automatic thing. But I do agree that it obviously needed a nerf at some point. And I agree. I've played a lot of the games of the new Tyrannus now. What have I played up to? Including the campaign stuff I've been doing, probably 12 or 14, maybe somewhere around that. So, and the different armies, Necrons against Eldar, against Space Marines? I can't remember. I've played a few different armies now. Chaos, Demons, and Chaos Space Marines. And it's been interesting. I do like them. One last thing, keep up the good work, and it was your Tyranid bat reps that actually got me to collecting them, so thank you for that. You're welcome, and I apologize to your bank account. Looking forward to a lot more Tyranid battle reports and seeing you try out all new sorts of lists. Oh, you will, because I just got a buttload more miniatures from Den of Imagination, and they look so awesome. Oh, I'm so excited. Xenomorph85. Hi Matt, it seems like your biggest problems with mini wargaming is finding players to play against. Yeah, it's a problem of being in a small city. Have you thought about moving the business to Toronto or another big city? Yes. Unfortunately, the huge thing that keeps us here is family. My family is all here, and Dave's family is all here. We're talking both sides of Dave's family, and most of both of my sides as well. And family is incredibly important to us. Not that it's not to other people, but it's very important to us. And so that would be very, very, very hard, nigh unto impossible to move because of that. Now, I have had the idea, not something that we're going to be able to do right away, but something kind of a fix, is opening up a satellite location where we just kind of have a small space with a couple rooms for studios and maybe another room for some computers. And then we could have kind of a, it's a branch of sorts in a larger city. Because we have, for example, Jay goes to Black Knight Games, and he plays there. There's a problem with the sound though, it's really loud. We're experimenting with some stuff, like he's going to start miking himself. So it's because people have been complaining about the sound, and I totally agree. It's been too noisy. But he is, in his recent ones, so I have not yet gone up, he is miking himself. And so we're going to see if that drowns out enough of the background noise. You'll still get some of the rumble, but he should be much louder than them. But it would be better if there was like a satellite location in Hamilton, because then Jay could go there, and then the players could come there. And it would be quiet, it would be professional, good lighting, just like you see when we play them here. So that's the idea that I have. It's not something that we can really afford yet, but we're hoping over the next year that the business will pick up, and it's growing, and that by that point we can afford to have more coverage with more employees, and then even maybe some satellite locations. That's my idea. We'll see what actually happens with that. I know you are probably going to say that you have your house and family there, but at some point your growth as a business is going to be limited by access to your player base. I agree. I agree. And that's kind of a decision that we have to make, and in the end, the business, to me, is a means to an end. It's a way for us to make money to support our families, and one day I'll retire from this, and one day I'll be dead, and the business will have factored very little into the grand scheme of things. And so I have to kind of keep that in mind too. We have to kind of keep it in just where we want it. I don't have a desire to grow this to the point that it's a multi-billion-dollar corporation. Not that it could, but I want it to grow. I want it to keep growing, and I want it to keep making us money, and I want to retire one day, and yeah, that's kind of the long-term plan there. Yunwish. Hello Matt, let me preface that I love your videos, and although I disagree with your politics and your religious beliefs you hold, I love that you are not afraid to speak your mind. Great that you can say that. I was wondering if there's any evidence, scientific discovery, archaeological discovery, philosophical argument that would make you lose your faith. Huh, that's a good question. I hesitate to anything, because that's one of the big issues that I find, is that some people who believe in religion, who believe in God, have a hard time when new things come out, and they're like, no, that can't be right. When really, to me, it comes down simply to the fact that science is not at odds with religion. I know that there are religions that would disagree with that they're like, no, we can't do that kind of stuff. But for me, I have no problem with it. All science does is describe how God does what he does. That if I just want to kind of put that out there. And so the more we learn, the more open it becomes. Like before, When we talked about like the Big Bang, for example, it's like we resist that because no, there was the creation, not the Big Bang and all that. But what if that was how he did it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, why couldn't that be it? Our understanding is so little compared to the ways that we're doing it. Really, we don't know how he does what he does. And so, to me, the more we learn, the more I'm just like, oh, okay, I can see that being how he does it. And so I would say that would be hard. Maybe for me would be if like some super high advanced alien race that didn't look like us whatsoever came here. Maybe that would kind of make me wonder. That's about it. Yeah. And even then, I'm not quite sure. It's hard to say. But that's a very good question. I like that question. Also, isn't majority rule just another type of tyranny? No, I don't think so. I know there have been majorities who have been kind of like a tyranny, but to me, it's like it can be, but like I said before, for the most part, I think it will be better. If the majority does not rule, it's not as if the minority must rule. There's always the option that no one rules and that everyone is equal and must coexist without making demands of each other. That's impossible, I think. Like, it's a cool philosophy, but where have we ever seen that work? There's always something, there's always some form of government to help regulate things. And I think that's always going to be the case as long as we're living on an imperfect world. Stressful Subby, hey Matt, have you played Wild West Exodus before? No. My friend and I just got into it and it's a ton of fun. I relate the turn structure, that is 3 activations at a time per player until each side has exhausted all activations and then it's the next turn. It allows for quick gameplay and makes you think more about the risk you take since a powerful unit can come out into the open to take out 3 units, for example, but then gets annihilated by the rest of the enemy's posse. Also, Coke or Pepsi? Neither. I don't like colas. I like my bones and my health. Not that there's other stuff that's unhealthy that I don't have. I love chocolate. I love fatty, wonderful chicken wings with the sauce that is made with butter and, yes. So a while now I'm hungry, I want chicken wings. I haven't had chicken wings for a while. And now I really want chicken wings. Thanks. Thanks for making me want chicken wings. I'm trying to eat healthy, okay? Jeez. Zogash85. Hey Matt, love your sit and talks. Thank you. Concerning majority rule, the main problem is that the majority can easily be manipulated into forming an opinion and voting based on ignorance. So if a factually wrong position is repeated often and vocally enough, the majority will believe it and disregard the countless scientific studies proving the contrary, but which aren't publicized nearly as aggressively. Yeah, it's a point of view. That's all I can really say to that. Yeah, I do agree. I do have to agree that the majority of people aren't, or a lot of people aren't doing their part when it comes to the government. The fact that we have such low voter turnout is indicative of that. When people are like, everybody needs to vote. Everybody. Well, okay. Let me hold that back. I know that, like, for example, Jehovah's Witnesses disagree with governments and all that stuff. So if you have, like, obviously there's a religious view there, and so I will respect that. I might disagree with it, but I will definitely respect that. But everybody else who doesn't disagree with based on religion or something like that, they need to go out and vote. And most people, you might say, well, people don't vote because everything's so corrupt. I don't think that. I think most people are just too busy to learn the issues. And to me, that it's important to learn what's going on and get out there and vote. It's incredibly important, actually, because otherwise it's not majority rules. If the minority of people are going out and voting and being noisy and working to lobby the government and stuff, then it's not a democracy anymore. It's everybody sitting back and allowing the lesser portion of the people to make decisions. About the monument issue, the whole point is that there may not be a legal difference between a huge church wanting to put up a monument in a public place and a tiny one wanting to do the same. Either both get you or none do. See, I disagree with that based on the fact, not so much that it's religion, but it's a historical thing. To me, that's just really what it is. And so people saying, well, if he gets that, then I get this. Because what are you going to do? You're just going to have everybody put your monuments there? And then you're going to say, well, then none. It's like, but it was kind of established based on that. So it's more, to me, it's more a historical thing. All right, Spiffner. Hi Matt, I was born and bred in Nottingham, England, home of Games Workshop, and although your defense of their prices was valiant, I cannot entirely agree. Sorry. Yes, I know. I can definitely not agree with my own points too when it comes to that. And I'm going to disregard the rest of your comment because we've already talked about price a lot. Jeppy, I don't see why you would want the Obliterix on the Tyranid Trigon Prime other than striking on Initiative 7, because for the Shred, You can give him poison. Unless fighting against the Eldar Knight, it will have a strength equal or higher than its victim. Yeah, I think that poison is probably a better choice than the Trigon Prime 2. I also have discussed with a miniature seller about GW prices. Okay. Skipping. Fabian. Democracy is the worst form of government except for all the others. Winston Churchill. That's who it was. Thank you. While I love this quote from Britain's great World War II leader, it's not applied to the US because, wait for it, we are in a democracy. We are a representative republic. Hence, when the majority speaks, there will be done. This might be unfair, but it is a fact. Sorry, one man's views. Make it yours. That's the way we look at it. No, yeah, so, yeah, representative republic, democracy, yeah. I know there will be interesting discussions based on that. Oh, I'm out of time. One more. Ooh, it's a big one. DGL 40K. Hey Matt, going to rephrase my question here. First off, the difference between nationalism and patriotism. Most nationalists assume that their country is better than any other, whereas patriots believe that their country is one of the best and can be improved in many ways. Okay, if that's how we're going to define it. In regard of our past, Hitler, Nazi Germany, Second World War, almost everyone here who shows even just a small sign of patriotism is considered a nationalist by a lot of people. I can see that based on the bias that now are had against the people because of the past, even though it's not really fair because that's the past. Why should you be judged based on what people in the past did? Like, it doesn't make any sense. I'm me, not them. Almost everyone here who shows even just a small sign of patriotism is considered nationalist. For example, if you have a German flag hanging from your balcony, you're pretty much branded as a nationalist or even a Nazi. Whereas in other countries, this is pretty normal. I think we in Germany need to overcome this and start to be proud about what we as a country achieved in the past years. And Germany has achieved a lot. It's really turned around. Well, yeah, I really respect a lot of what's happened there. Our country was in ruins, separated into two parts, and the whole world looked down on Germany. Now we are reunited again, one of the strongest economical countries in Europe and the world. I'm proud of that. But ironically, most people around look down on me when I say that. On the opposite side, when I was in the United States as an exchange student and tried to talk about the current problems there with friends, everyone basically just said, no, the United States are the best and everyone else sucks. I think that really hurts the US because it makes them too blind to see the problems they have to face in the future. So to sum it up, do you think patriotism is important for a country? Does a lack of patriotism even hurt a country? And do you think that too much patriotism and even nationalism hurts a country in the long run, looking at the US? I think that the way I like to look at the country is I'm happy to live here. I'm used to what I have to live here. Like, I've always thought it'd be nice to move to the States for the prices, but I like having healthcare the way I have it here. And I know people will be like, oh, but healthcare there is better, but I don't care. This is what I'm used to, and so it's hard to change. But I agree that we should respect our country. We need to uphold the laws, and we need to work to improve it. Obviously, getting proud and saying my country's better than others, like, you know, having some pride. The Olympics are going on, and being happy that country's winning the medals, or that you're winning. You know, that's fun. That's all good fun, as long as it's not taken too far, like it sometimes does, which is pretty ridiculous. When you get riots, like, come on, it's just sports. Riots, like, come on. So yeah, I agree that patriotism is important. If that's how you're defining it, then yeah, be patriotic. Think your country is good. And work on making it better. And don't look down on others. I think that's just a good, basic, moral, ethical thing. So yeah, I can see why the Germans would have that kind of stigma attached, and it's unfortunate, but I can understand it. But I would hope that people can overcome that as we move further and further away from what had happened before. So yeah, so I'm going to end it there on that nice heavy note, or light, happy note. Sorry that I didn't get to everybody else's comments. And I am sorry that I missed the past 2 weeks, but that's kind of the way the Sit and Talks work. I intend to do them weekly, if I can. So if you don't see one Friday, I know that a lot of you like to watch them on a weekly basis, and I will do my best to have these weekly, but there will be times when I do have to miss them because I have a lot of other stuff to get done. You can actually see right there, you can see my list of things to do, if you can read it. So there's actually a big list of stuff that I got to get done today, just today. So thank you very much for joining me for this Sit and Talk. Leave your comments at the link below if you're on YouTube, or just in the comments below if you're watching this on Mini Wargaming. This is Matthew from Mini Wargaming. Happy Wargaming.